My name is McKenna Avery, and I'm from San Diego, born in Redlands, the IE, and I am now a documentary producer.
Nice. Okay, great. Okay, so can you tell us what type of documentary producer?
Yeah, overall, I always just say producer in general because there's podcasts, there's the documentaries that we do with kind of like, so I work with a company called Sundoc Studios, and so we'll do branded projects and on behalf of companies or brands that are like, hey, we have a really cool story of how we came to be or what problem we're solving, or just it's something cool that is really interesting in human storytelling, impact related. And then we have our independent documentaries where we get to choose what stories we want to highlight and just putting all our effort behind that of showing whatever that happened. Like with our company, we've brought back, helped bring back hostages from other countries. We've like we've showcased cultures that are or that are underrepresented, or we highlight sustainability things of how we're making a difference, like in the climate, all of these things. So the breadth is very it's very apparent.
And is your podcast kind of tied in with all this, or is that your separate
Separate, I think,
gig?
because I was like learning so much about production with this company that I was like, I want to make an impact in going to like, okay, what unique value proposition do I have? And it's like, well, now that I have this background, I can make a podcast. I know how to produce and all of that stuff. So, and I felt that I had this a slight void of, I need to do something in cancer because I had this experience, and now there's like this, I need to funnel that somewhere, and this is like the way that I was doing it.
Okay, so kind of as we're kind of going backwards a little bit. Okay, so you're part of what Sundoc, right? Is what
Yeah.
it's called. And then you have like this podcast. The podcast is focused on cancer because you had an experience. So what's your experience?
So I also, before all of this, I have slash had a personal care company called Hempers Hygienics. So we made the first hemp based period care products out there. So that started in college, and I would say it was like the booming time of my life. Like, kind of, we just had launched this product and our company, and I was like the most socialite person ever, doing like 6 a.m. days to 10 p.m. nights, like just like the go, go, go. But that also was like very not listening to my body vibes. And then a series of events, and I was on a run one day right after I launched the company, and to just like relieve stress and all of that stuff. And then I felt like I'd broken my ankle, and it was just my whole leg swelled up twice the size as my other one. And I was just like, what's going on here? And was misdiagnosed with blood clots, and I still remember going to the ultrasound, and the ultrasound tech being like, she was kind of like a talkative person that maybe she's revealing more than she should. And she was like, oh my gosh, these are the two largest blood clots I've ever seen in my life, like right in my like groin area. And I
And
was
you're
like,
like how old at this time?
yeah, I'm 23 at this time.
Okay, so that's really comforting to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, let's go. But
Hmm.
also, it felt nice to have an answer, honestly. Like, the answers always feels better than the unknown, because it's like
Yeah.
you're filling in the blanks. And then I go on a blood thinner for a couple months, nothing's changing, and my Tdap comes back negative. So that's what tests for blood clots. And so they're like, something else is going on here. I get a scan, and they're like, oh, it's actually a big mass that's blocking your blood vessels, and that's what's creating these blood clots looking things, but you don't actually have blood clots, that sort of thing. So that was what was going on, causing all of the blood to swell, and that's why my leg was like, me limping around.
And did that cause, was that like relieving to you to hear that, like, oh, it's not like the biggest blood clot she's ever seen, it's just something that's clotting the blood, like,
Yeah,
oh,
at
it's probably
first, for
fine.
sure. At first I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, there's like something in there, whatever. And then I remember this appointment where my doctor was like, Yeah, okay, before the surgery, because we need to remove it to do a biopsy, we don't think it's cancer, but we're just gonna check. And I was like, well, no one said that, but now that you're saying that, now I'm starting to think, is it cancer? Because you just said the C word out of nowhere, like it was just interesting. And
It was
then,
the first time you heard the C word was they were like, well,
yeah,
we don't think it is. And then you're wondering, wait, that's even in question right now?
yeah, exactly. And I'm like, but you just said you don't think it is, but you are saying it. So it's a very interesting kind of exchange there. And then I go into the surgery, they remove it, and I find out on a Saturday night at midnight. I check my chart, and they're like, synovial sarcoma. And I just was kind of like, okay, I don't know honestly what that means. Of course you Google it, and at that time my roommate is a vet, and she was up still, and I was like, can you help me like just like think through this, because I'm kind of at a loss right now. And she was like, well, uh, you you do have cancer. That's what this is telling you. And I was still in denial. And I was like, well, just because the mass is like cancerous doesn't mean I have cancer. Like it's different. It was a stage of denial for me. And then not being able to talk to the doctor for a while, it really was testing my own ability to maintain a peace of mind while I had to just kind of wait.
Did she know? Because are you familiar with the fact that sarcoma, I think it's specifically osteosarcoma, is one of the most common cancers in dogs? And I wasn't
Oh,
sure if she actually noticed the word sarcoma because it's actually very like I'm actually in contact with some vets because research in dogs, and I'm meaning research that help dogs, not like the testing
yeah.
stuff that you see like on social media. I'm talking about they're treated as patients who have no like care, so these dogs with sarcoma go and get treatment just like people. I'm in contact with these vets, and it's they're actually were able to get information from the research that the dogs are participating and from people, and we can kind of basically work together on seeing what things are working. So I found that very interesting because maybe this was just completely not her specialty or anything like that, but I found it very interesting that she was a vet. So okay,
Yeah,
so you said,
that's a cool crossover, because she did like know
yeah.
what sarcoma was, and like now that with this dog like connection, that makes sense.
Yeah, maybe you can ask her because I that's just very interesting. But
Dude, I
but
should
then
call her up
after,
right now.
yeah, 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 you should. You should be like, did you actually know
I know.
sarcoma? So then you said you didn't hear from
Because it
the
was a
team for a while?
weekend. Yeah, it was a weekend, so I was like, okay, I can't get a hold of my doctor. I did call like the line, the hospital line, and they're like, yo, I'm so sorry, you're gonna have to wait to talk to your doctor, like when they have appointment. So I waited like about 4 days before I could actually talk to my doctor about it. And it, because they didn't know it was going to be cancerous, they didn't take the margins of the mass. So that's like really important as well for someone going into for a surgical mass removal. Maybe either way, take the margins, because if you don't, it's more likely to spread and all of that stuff. And at that point, it was already hitting my lymph nodes and all of those things. And so it's that part's important.
So yeah, so this was purely just biopsy.
It was
So they
like
didn't
not
take.
even biopsy, because they took the whole mass out. So it was like a mass removal. And and then upon doing so, they're like, yeah, we have the diagnosis, and we also see that your lymph nodes are affected.
Oh, so they just
So
didn't happen to get the margins in
they
that
didn't.
surgery.
Hi, I'm about to go in. Thank you so much for your text. That's so sweet. And thank you for being so organized about everything. And you, like, are just so good at making sure everything's taken care of. So I have to go.
Mm-mm. But
Oh,
I think if they had known it was cancerous, they would have taken the margins to make sure, because it's almost like a little bubble. And so when you break the bubble, it can kind of
but
spread
also if it
more.
went to your lymph nodes, then you've got a different situation going
Yeah,
on.
exactly. And so it was kind of blurred lines of like, when are the lymph nodes just inflamed, or are they affected? So it was hard to tell. And then kind of jumping from, because sarcoma is more specialized, especially synovial sarcoma. It's like represents 1% of all sarcomas, very rare. And at that time, I was seeing an oncologist who had never worked with anyone with sarcoma. And so luckily, we found a doctor who had already worked with like 32 patients with specifically synovial sarcoma. And I was like in San Diego. And that was just a gold mine of, wow, I'm getting to see someone who actually knows what they're talking about.
Did that come as a surprise to you that there was like specific specialized, because there's a lot of specialized care and we're aware of this because there's all these different departments within medicine, but then sarcoma is like it's like oncology within oncology because it's really rare. And that's not exactly what it's like, but that's I think how some people think about it. How was it again that they like that you were guided towards this expert care? Like, did they just tell you that you needed to go seek expert care?
Yeah, I had to switch over my whole like hospital system, my insurance, like all of that stuff to go see this special list because my current oncologist like had never even had barely heard of it, sort of thing. And so they were like, there's one person in San Diego that's no like is familiar with this. Let's create a case around the importance of you seeing them. Go to the insurance, tell them why we need this to be authorized because it was out of network and all of that stuff, and tell your group, your medical group. Like it was a whole case and going back and forth and writing a letter to be like, this is why she should be able to see this specialist because she won't get the correct care if she doesn't.
So then you went to go see the specialized care, and so then what happened from that point?
So specialized care, she was just like, okay, you're stage 3, you are young, we're going to treat this aggressively. And the treatment plan was 4 to 6 rounds of AIM chemo, otherwise known as the Red Devil, because it's the most intense chemo you can get. And then radiation, and then another limb saving surgery. And then you're good to go. And I was like, okay, easy. What, a year and a half, all of this? Like, let's go. I'll get back to what I was doing before. Solid. We have a plan. And seeming like it was just going to happen so smoothly. But that's not always how it goes.
Did it go smoothly?
I wouldn't say so. I would say, so the first it was like, okay, both the radiation and the chemo can zap your fertility, and we have a window of time that we can do some egg retrieval. So I ended up doing the egg retrieval surgery with help with Chick Mission, and my sister did a GoFundMe for me to just cover all of the different cares that I would need because I did have to like step away from work and I had to move and all of these things. And so those factors led me to be able to do the fertility preservation. I extracted 33 eggs, which was awesome. And then I also had this, it was holiday season, December. And so there was a little lag in the hospital system. And I was like, you know what? I need to go on one last trip. I'm a huge traveler. And I was like, for me, just to know that no matter what happens, to have that peace, like I need to go on one more big trip. And I had all these points built up and all of these things. So one of my best friends and I went to New Zealand for almost a month and just took a road trip all around. And it was like that last hurrah of being like, you know what, I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'm gonna feel alive for this last month before all of these things change, and do and live and breathe so presently so that I can like be prepared for what's about to come. I did face a lot of resistance from my medical team of like, just wait till after, or just like, we need to get started, we need to get started. And I was like, well, to me, I just know this is going to go so much better for me if I do this first. And I just felt that need to do it. And after, I was so much more prepared to go into this journey. And then in that first week of chemotherapy, so it was 5 days in the hospital being infused 24/7, and it's that like hazard, like someone comes into your hospital room completely covered head to toe and like what looks like they're approaching a nuclear bomb site or something, because they're just like completely covered and they can't even breathe the air that is in the same space as what's going to be injected into your body and stuff. So I was like, dang, this is intense. And then I was like fine being infused, and then on day 3 it's just like all the things started hitting, and it was the most intense it's like the most intense feelings I've ever experienced. And with the pain and the just like my body's reaction and the nausea and the hallucinations, like it was crazy. And it was the like yeah, it was the most pain I've ever been in. And after that experience, I just was like, I know down to my soul I can never do this again, even though I'm supposed to do 5 more treatments. And the doctor is like, you forget by the time you do the next treatment. There's like a 3 weeks that you get your body to rebuild and all of that stuff. And I was like, there's no way I'm forgetting. Like I don't see that happening. And at that time my blood work, of course came back too, and I was handling it especially bad, and my body was shutting down in ways that probably would be really detrimental to do another round. But either way, I was like, I need a pivot. So I took those 3 weeks to really decide and feel into what I wanted the rest of my healing journey to look like.
So when they gave you this treatment and you're like sitting there for the very first time and you're feeling it take effect, like thinking like minute by minute, what do you remember? What is the very first feeling you felt as an effect of that treatment? Like, um, it could be like nausea, pain, you were talking about hallucinations, and it could be the smallest thing ever, but was there just a little sense of where you were like, wait, something's really off about this?
Yeah, there was this insatiable itch that completely consumed my whole body, and I couldn't it was so deep and internal that I couldn't get away from it. And that feeling felt like an absolute trap, where it was like I can't get to it, and like it was a version of torture that I just could have never predicted, and I wasn't expecting that either.
So they were saying that you were going to forget this. I'm assuming you didn't forget because
I
you're
didn't.
telling about it now. So
Yeah.
clearly it didn't leave your mind.
It
So
didn't.
how are the remaining ones?
Well, and so at that point, I told my oncologist that I'm going to stop treatment, and as far as the chemotherapy goes, and she was like, of course, like, don't, like, maybe don't stop it. And I was like, and there's just like, I genuinely feel like if anything kills me, it's gonna be this. Like, I feel that so deeply. And going a little bit more woo woo, but on the New Zealand trip, one of the things that I wanted to do was make a documentary about this cancer treatment. And so I saw 3 people there. One was like a naturopath, the second was an indigenous healer, and the third was a hypnotist and a hypnotherapist. And something that I took away in the hypnotherapy was that besides just like really relaxing my body and focusing on healing and stuff, she was like, whatever you think isn't going to work, it's not going to work because your body's like so resistant to it. Maybe you're not going to be as consistent with it, like all of these things. And I really resonated with that. And I was like, it's so deeply, I know that this isn't going to work for me. So I'm already making the odds of it working so much worse. Like when we look at the placebo effect, that is a real medical treatment, right? And so it's like I know that for me specifically that this is something that isn't going to work for me, and I'm such an advocate of we're the only people that knows what's going to heal ourselves. And for me it wasn't this. And So during this time, I did a deep dive of like anything and everything that other people have tried to uh, to heal their cancer, and to different treatments and innovative therapies, or maybe complementary care, all of these things. And there was a certain people who've come to my life that just presented other options, and I was like, that's actually what I want it to look like. And I remember one of my friends showing me a social media page of this woman who healed her stage 3 thyroid cancer, and the way that she was healing through building her immune system up and like detoxing and trying all of these different things, but she had this like light about her, and she had this she just looked healthy. And I was like, that's what I want my healing to look like. I want it to feel like I'm getting better. Not we pivoted to was focusing on proton radiation therapy, which is targets the specific area, but it doesn't affect the rest of the body where the cancer cells could be growing. And so to target the specific area, we did proton radiation, where instead of regular radiation where it goes all the way, blasts all the way through the body, specifically it stops in the area that should be most concentrated. It did all the other things of, I tried gene therapy, the IV infusions, RSO, did ozone therapy and diet and lifestyle changes like EMDR, and did like all of these supplements and mushrooms, and like the list goes on. And so it was like this two-prong approach of really, really approaching this from a let's try everything lens. Something's gonna work, something's gonna stick. And it, in the end, something worked for me, and now I'm in remission 3 years later.
Oh gosh, this was 3 years.
Yeah,
Th- Wow. Wow. So you're in remission. So basically what you did is you didn't obviously go down the full route of alternative treatment, but what you decided to do is say, hey, this really intense one, I just have this gut intuition. This is really not the right route for me. Can we try something that's less intense while I also on the side am doing things that I'm gonna like hope work based on my own research?
100%. Yeah, and I think a term that would have been really helpful for this that I wish I had known was integrative oncology, because that's something that integrative therapies do, is the balance of conventional and complementary, and really pairing those two in a seamless complementary way. That's kind of like the term that encapsulates what I did. I didn't know about it, but I'm like making my own, and I think that would have been a lot easier. And it, of course, there was like the fear going into these shifts, because I had this plan, this treatment plan that was so mapped out for me and simple in a timeline, and that felt good and reassuring. But going inward and listening, like, to be a different person, I have to like be a different person to be someone without cancer. And even though that those like outlined organized ways used to bring me so much comfort, this new version of me has to be a risk taker, and it has to be a someone who's open to anything, and it has to be someone who's determined to stay alive. So that mindset shift was really important, even when my oncologist is being like, okay, the only people who have stopped chemo early with your diagnosis, and early to her was like doing 4 out of the 6 treatments, she was like, haven't lived. And it was like that, well, it sucks like that for them and for my own odds, but just really evaluating what I valued in that time, and it was like quality of life no matter what happens. And that was like an internal decision that only I could make, not listening to anyone around me, honestly, because it's like the journey lies in our individual hands, and we're the only ones who can make those decisions and have peace around that and take ownership around our healing and our diagnosis and our path forward.
But you weren't like it sounds more like it's not like you were super highly optimistic about these other treatments, which it sounds like now that you have certain opinions about them, but it sounds like you were more, it's just this treatment that you were receiving was so aggressive for you that you were, it was more about the negative impression that you had gotten from that. Is that an accurate statement?
I would say that that treatment, the chemo, was the the inciting moment to empower and motivate me to look for other options. And then in doing the other options, that's when I really had to make the decision to be so optimistic about whatever works, because optimism is genuinely a treatment in itself. Believing that it's going to work, having hope, being motivated, like that energy is what makes all of the other treatments sustainable, essentially. So that was huge. And I had even gotten, I don't know if you're familiar with Joe Dispenza, but I had even gotten he's like he bridges meditation and science to
Mhm.
heal. And so he's partnered with like University of California, San Diego to show the research of, and I've actually interviewed one of his researchers who work for UCSD, where they like take samples of people's all of their like diseases and their bloodlines and all of that, or like their blood work before and after their intensive meditations and their coachings and like their healing practices, and take the samples again after, and they've proved that that those modalities can actually lessen the appearance of disease and certain cell mutations that were present before. So it's like very for I would say I was more of a skeptic before, and then I watched this documentary that exhibited some of these possibilities and other ways that people heal. And so I would say like a couple documentaries during this process completely changed my trajectory of healing as well. And that's what kind of like initiated my own desire to get into documentary after this process too, because it was like I see how this directly affects people's lives so much.
Well, also, meditation has been around for like centuries across many different civilizations, and it would be quite ignorant of us to say that it doesn't work, considering it's been used for so long for so many different things. And you are right, like it does have a very real effect on the human body. And there's a lot of different forms of meditation. There's ones that have come out recently that I personally am very into, like the meditation with binaural beats, like the ones they used in the Gateway tapes that were made in like the 1950s by Robert Monroe. Those are my favorite. But yeah, no, that's interesting how you, because I do know people use alternative medicines while they're going through these treatments. Again, just want to say, like, I fully, my opinion is that they are complementary and not as a replacement. But a lot of patients do use them as complementary, and they really do come back and say, I think that really did the job it was supposed to do.
Yeah, and even with all of these treatments, it's like it's it makes the side effects of conventional treatments so much better. So it's like it doesn't, like you're saying, it's really making the whole conventional treatment journey so much easier, because for example, nausea, there's like dozens of different.
Yeah. So, okay, so I'm curious. So you started bringing up meditation. I don't know if you were just using it as an example, but was that one of the, that sounds like it was obviously one of the things that you were using. Was that one of the more significant complementary treatments that you were using? And if so, like, can you talk about what kind,
Yes.
how you think it helped you, when did you use it, all that?
Absolutely. So it was like in those, right after the chemo, before I had to decide if I was going to do my next round sort of thing, one of my friends had come to visit, and he introduced me to this meditation coach slash healer person named Rick Walia. And I was like, you know what? I'll try anything. let's connect. I hop on a call with Rick, and he's the one that's really affiliated with the Joe Dispenza community and their types of meditation, all of that stuff. I was very new to this whole world. And that was the guiding force behind all of the healing I did after, because it's like starts in the mind of how you make every decision and where that comes from and whatever. And how I would describe that is basically like living and feeling as though you're already healed in the future, like telling you're like telling your body where it's going, because we can communicate with our body of like, okay, raise my hand, like it's just like all the ways that we have this body mind connection, and so it strengthens that connection, but telling your body where to go. So you imagine what it would feel like to be cancer free, to hear the news that your cancer's gone, like all of that sort of thing. And then when you feel into that, you're telling your body where you're trying to go. And that's like one portion of it. A second portion is like breaking the boundaries of what we think is possible. So it involves being very creative and very goofy, and having a lot of self-love around every part of your journey. And it's like, I remember asking him, like, what if this doesn't work? Like, what if this isn't helping or whatever? And he was like, well, worst case, you die having a lot more self-love for yourself, because it's not like you're doing this and stopping all the other things you're doing this alongside all of the other stuff. So it's like, this is just helping ease all of the other hard stuff you're doing. And that allowed my whole nervous system to relax. It allowed me to come and make every decision out of a place of love rather than fear, and out of expansiveness rather than restrictedness or scarcity. And so I would say that like my anxiety just went so minimal after these types of meditations. And so it was like a lot of regulation there too. So I would say like that, and then also EMDR, where you're like releasing all of these suppressed emotions that are proven to suppress your immune system. It's like all of that, when you get that energy out and all of those the emotions that you've been hanging on to forever, you're creating a space where your body can have that energy to heal and be affected by all these different treatments.
Did you ever do any different types of breathing techniques, like the shamanic breathing or like box breathing and all that kind of stuff?
I did. I did. Yeah. And I would say there was like, and in Joe Dispenza too, he has like this one breathing modality too, where you're like taking the breath up from like the base of your body to the top and all of that stuff. But I never tried the shamanic. What is shamanic breathing?
So shamanic breathing, I'm probably going to get some facts wrong here, but just
Perfect.
bear with me. Okay, so shamanic breathing is basically you're focusing more on the breath in than you are out, so you'll naturally breathe out. But it's I think they also call it like dragon's breath, but you do like the and it's
Mm,
supposed and you do it for there's different types where you can do it for a long time. There's ones where you do short amount of time. There's a recent meditation I did that's called Rise of the Phoenix, and you're supposed to release like um
hot air.
no, you're supposed to release something,
Okay.
some sort of negative energy you're carrying, whatever.
Mm,
You didn't even name it, like something you're dealing with. Let's just say anxiety, because it's just a broad one. And basically, it's on Insight Timer, and I love it. I don't do it that often because it's really intense, but you do that shamanic breathing for like 20 minutes straight. And it actually has a physical effect on your body where you actually start releasing certain tensions, and you actually do
mhm.
start getting really emotional because it triggers that part. But it's a very old technique. And then there's also ones where you put like I forget this one, but you breathe through your like left nostril, and then you breathe out through like your right, and you do that like alternative, and that's like a vagus nerve one. Anyways,
Yeah,
there's
which
some
is
other
like
ones.
very similar to like the EMDR, which is like movement, rapid, but or the tapping, it's like the same with the nostril. It's like this back and forth, like the bilateral stimulation, it has huge effects. Did you
Yeah, yeah,
so
it
you
does.
felt the emotion come up in the shamanic breathing?
Yeah, and that's why I don't do it very often, is
No,
because it's
you're like
like
too much. I don't want this.
I was like, I have to go back to work. I like, let's just let's calm down for a second. But like, I've
Yeah.
like points in my own life where I've needed to be like, all right, I don't know how to get this out, but like, and I just found it one day. Honestly, it was like I was like kind of struggling for a thing. I was like, I need something to help with this, and I did that, and I remember being like, well, I'm not doing that for a long time, but it helped. And it's kind of when you're at the peak of like a really hard time, and then yeah, and then you have like you have to keep up afterwards with some other meditations. But that one's really intense. But yeah, that one I did recently as well, and it helps. Yeah, it helps release a lot of stuff. But anyway, so I was just curious if you had done like there's shamanic work, and there's also Reiki and all
Yes.
that kind of stuff that I personally, and I say this as somebody who works in like scientific research.
I
Like
know, that's why it's cool. I love that
I've
crossover.
and again, like I just like I've gone through my own like really intense hospital experiences, so like I have to keep saying, like, I don't say it as like a replacement, but I do, like, there is something I believe, to this stuff, because I've like felt it myself. Um, and it is making a little bit more like headway in our culture of finding these. I like your term of not using alternative, complementary
Yeah.
treatments,
Because
because they do
if it's
help.
totally, and if it's not replacing anything, there's no negatives. Like there really isn't a risk to Reiki. Like there's no like it's not a bad thing or scary or anything like that if it's being used alongside other things as well. So I feel like that's probably why the culture's just catching up to all of these things, because there was like resistance because it was used as a replacement before, but it's like, oh, this can actually help all the other stuff you're doing too.
Did you have like physicians or medical professionals on your team that like were openly really supportive of this?
I would say they were more like every time I go see my oncologist, you like tell she's like, "Oh, what do tell me all the other things you're doing, the supplements or other care." And come I would talk for like 5 minutes straight of like all this different stuff, and she's like, "Oh, wow. Okay. Okay, never heard of that one. Interesting." But it's really awesome to have those interactions, because I think that she'll start to see other people incorporating this, and kind of maybe one day even being like, oh, these are options on the table. And what she's really good at too is showing the what's it called when like a medication, like a counter, they don't work with each other. There's a contraindication. So
Yeah,
she'll look
yeah.
into those for me and be like, oh, this supplement is contradicting with something else you're doing. She's like really good at that. So I was like, heck yeah. And then the
Especially with things like St. John's wort is like it actually, some people do use it. Again, like I can't back this one up because I don't work in psychiatry, but some people do use it for as like a mild antidepressant for anxiety or depression. But you like, as someone who actually writes clinical trials, there are a lot where they actually ask you to don't take this, because herbs, you have to be really careful, can actually interact with each other, and they can interact with medications. It's not like, they can be really strong stuff depending on what you're using.
you're right. Yeah. And it's like, because some people think that, oh, the herbs, like, I can just kind of make my own concoction, whatever, which you can if you do a lot of research. But I found it was so much more helpful to go see an integrative oncologist or practitioner and a functional medicine doctor and I saw a naturopath who had a medical degree, like who was also a doctor, like having those balance each other was super important for these types of things that are hard to know. Like it's hard to do your own research to all this. Like in your experience, did you do a lot of the research, or did you rely on other people to kind of guide you through different ways of getting out of your
For
situation?
me, for me specifically, oh gosh, my situation was 10 years ago and I was bedridden. So I didn't have access to I mean, I'll briefly say what happened just so that people know what I'm talking about. So I didn't have cancer. I had something called acute respiratory distress syndrome. And they didn't know where it came from. They just knew that I got some bacteria in my lungs. And I was like a runner. I never drank, did drugs, whatever. I was just like a art student, like in high school. Like there was like nothing. This happened when I was 18, so it was like right after high school. And so my oxygen level actually when I got to the hospital was so low, it was at 50%. So
Oh,
I was, yeah,
jeez.
I was put into a coma the next day, an induced coma. So then I was on trach and I was on ECMO and I was on the lung transplant list within that week. So I actually, weirdly enough, I had some like what people will call like paranormal experiences because you're not fully asleep the entire time. You do wake up if the medication runs out, and it ran out. Like they had to come refill the
Oh,
drip. And I remember like waking up and my hands were actually tied down to the bed, and I remember like I couldn't talk, and so it felt like a horror movie because I was like, what is going on? And then I'd like feel the medication and I'd like go back to sleep. But after they woke me up and I spent another 3 weeks in the hospital, um they actually had me walk on uh a treadmill. Like they actually woke me up from my coma, which actually helped, I guess. And so I guess you can call that an alternative or alternative complementary like medicine, was actually just walking and like getting my blood flowing. Um, and this was actually at Northwestern Hospital, and I remember all the medical students were watching me. And I actually think that's what saved me because I didn't end up having a lung transplant. But I do remember I was really young. I knew I was dying, even though I kept asking the staff. I was like, "Am I dying?" And I remember they'd look at me kind of like scared and oh, and they like, just wouldn't really answer. I remember asking my mom. I like texted her because it was like late at night. She wasn't there, and I was like, "Hey, am I dying?" And I remember she just like didn't reply. So I was like, "All right, so this checks out." And I was really young, so I think I just didn't have a lot of perspective as to what was going on, but I just kind of weirdly accepted it. And
mm.
so I didn't have like that type of, but what I did do is like afterwards they told me, they were like, you're not going to be able to like you'll be fine, but your lungs are really damaged. You're not going to be able to like climb Mount Everest or anything like that. And knowing me, I'm kind of like, is that a challenge?
Yeah. Is that an
Is
invitation?
that is that okay? I didn't know I was gonna get a challenge here, but thank you. But actually, complimentary. So I drank a lot of teas that were actually supposed to be good for respiratory health. I don't know if they worked, but one thing I actually started to do is I started to climb the Stairmaster a lot, and now I can do 30 minutes at level 8 with a 30-pound weighted vest.
Oh my
So,
goodness, girl.
and
That's crazy.
no scarring on my X-rays. So
Whoa.
my lungs are they're pretty good.
Wait,
So
that's
I'll say that was,
amazing. Okay, also,
yeah,
I do want to hear about your paranormal experiences because I feel like that's something that, because people who go through like all types of cancer treatment may normally experience some sort of in like anesthesia or like whatever, where these things are
yeah,
more common. Where,
yeah. To be very clear, I did not like know about this figure at all. This was like not in my memory. This is not what I was thinking about, whatever. But it is a common thing that actually a lot of nurses talk about their patients experiencing right before they die, which I only found out later on because like I didn't look this up for a couple of years because I was so scared. But what happened was is when I was in induced coma, well, actually two things happened. One, a very vivid dreamer, and I think what I was going through does induce some sort of like chemicals your body releases, so you do have very vivid dreams. I think that's a part of all this. the dreams. There are two. One was reoccurring. And when I mean reoccurring, you're like, oh, well, you were in a induced coma, so you're not like waking up and falling asleep all the time. Yeah, but you do feel time pass by, and you hear people that to medical professionals, we can hear you. I, by the way, like I heard people say things about my family, and I was like you can hear people talk about it. And I remember recognizing a nurse after my coma, and I said, like I recognized her. It was very interesting. And anyways, past that
Wait, what
point,
do you mean
I
about feeling time pass? Like, so you just like, are you just like, damn, it's like been a long time or?
yeah, no, you like are you feel yourself asleep. You feel yourself like in, and it's not like you feel the whole, like, because I was in a coma for a week, you don't feel the whole week pass by, but you do feel like, wait, your body knows like, okay, wait, this has been going on for a while, like, why am I not, coming to?
Does it feel restless as well? Like, are you like, I need to get out of here, or is it just more?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, but you're so, I mean, with the drugs they give you, you're completely out of it. And so I remember like the dreams I'd have were I was so aware of my body, because remember I'm in a coma and they had hooked me up to all these machines, and at the moment I didn't really know that I was hooked up to all these things. I actually got up and I in my dream and I unhooked myself from everything. And I walked out of the room and I turned around, and down this like dark hallway there was this like a man, and he was all in like black like a shadow with a top hat. And I was like, this is really weird. And we just stared at each other, and I remember not feeling anything weird from him, but then I would like feel like his presence next to my bed. And I actually had a family friends come and visit, and there was one who said she didn't want to come to my bedside because she felt like something was there. Yeah. So, and I was like,
Oh
and
my
I remember
goodness.
I never told her because I was actually scared about it myself. I was like, yeah, but like, I don't know. I was dreaming this. I didn't know if it was real. There's another thing that happened, and it was the same thing. Like, it didn't get more interesting. It was just, I encountered him. The other thing that happened was this only happened once, and this is actually very sad. There's a family I used to babysit, and they have four kids, and I won't say the names, but I remember I was actually running through their house trying to babysit them. And I encountered one of the children who was a girl. And I said, "Where's your brother? Uh, we'll call him Jack." I said, "Where's Jack?" And she says, "Well, Jack's not here anymore." And I remember thinking that was really weird because I remember Jack was very present in the home. So I remember just thinking that's really weird. And I kept looking for him, and I saw all the other kids, but I didn't see him. And 2 years later, he actually passed away in a car accident. And those are the dreams I had. And I never told the mom because, like, that just doesn't feel like that's just not helpful. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, by the way, I had a dream. Like, that's just not helpful. But I remember, like, when he passed away, I was like, oh yeah, I had a dream about that, I think. So you could say, oh, that's just like is coincidental, but that's the only person I know who passed away at that young of an age from something really um sudden. It was just a freak accident. But yeah, so those are my experiences.
Wow, that is
Yeah.
actually so, thank you so much for sharing that. It is just so incredible. And it's like I'm just like, and there like what you're saying about like this figure being kind of common, and like that almost like knowing that comes out of almost dying. I have heard a lot of like anecdotal experiences like this, and it, I don't want to say it's a common phenomenon, but there is a repetitive nature to this, and it's like
It's
it's just interesting to know.
Yeah, they're the you might know the figure's called Hat Man, and there's actually a lot of people who in the ICU, especially elderly people who are about to pass away, will see
But it's like,
Hat Man.
did that couldn't have happened before hats were invented, right? Like it's like interesting because it's like that had
Maybe
to
that's
be
how hats were invented,
that's
was like
oh
someone saw
my
Hat
goodness.
Man, and they were
Wait, you
thinking
just
this guy's
you
got
solved the
style.
mystery. You're right. You're right.
I
Because I've
mean,
had friends like who've like had a similar experience with Hat Man. And then also when I was watching like the documentary about people who have had near-death experiences, like coming out and knowing who was like next, which is like horrible to say, but like knowing whose
Yeah.
life was coming to an end, and it's like so unexplainable and fascinating, and also clues into the mysteries of existence, and it's oddly beautiful too.
So with your experience, and I know we've only got a few minutes left, but I am kind of curious, did you have any experiences that were um I mean, you said you had hallucinations. Did you ever have any feeling like, because you were really, you had a very severe, you had stage 3. I mean, that's, that's pretty intense. Did you have any experiences where it felt like you're like, "Ooh, I didn't think I was gonna visit this realm
I think,
before," or anything
well,
like that?
I do remember, like, on when I was in the hospital, I just people would had come visit me in real life, had come visit me, and I just have no recollection of it, and it's like, that's so weird to me of being like, "Dang, I had full-on conversations and don't remember it." That's never happened to me, and because I don't, like, get blacked out or anything ever, and so it's like, I'm just like, "That's crazy, like, what how does that happen?" And then also on the like in the unit in the hospital, they have a I don't know if occupational therapist or what they I think it is. But she'll come and give you healing touch. And I remember, and this is part of the hospital, which I think is so beautiful because it's a teaching hospital as well. And all she does is just like touch your feet and then touch your head, like, and just calms the nervous system, makes healing a little bit more
That sounds like
palatable.
Reiki.
I
That
know,
sounds like
that's the
Reiki.
thing. And it's like
Hmm.
someone who's wearing a medical vest and a lab coat and whatever, and I'm just like, this is so cool that they're offering
Wow.
this. It's beautiful. And so that was fantastic. They also offer sometimes like massage or acupuncture in the hospital too. And so there's like this awareness, this movement happening. It's awesome. And I do remember when I was there getting this healing touch, I was like closing my eyes and receiving, and I felt like her hands on my shoulder, and I was just like, wow, like I feel the touch feels exactly like my grandma's touch. And I was just like thinking like, it wow, for some reason like her touch is just so close to my grandma who had passed a couple years prior, and I it was almost like I could see her. And then so much so that I was like, I'm just gonna open my eyes." And when I opened my eyes, I saw that the healing touch practitioner was at my feet actually. And so
Oh,
it was really like, it just was like this knowing, and it was very comforting in a way too of like, wow, she came back down here for me. And she passed from cancer as well, and I was just like, this is so special. I feel so supported. And I she would come to my dreams a lot too, and that was something that hadn't happened before. That was just one example, but so many other things, of course, of just like these crazy synchronicities. I do one of the practices we did in the meditation was imagining when you hear the good news that you're cancer free. One of my one of my big imaginations in in this realm was like hearing that I'm cancer free, and then my friends and I are all celebrating to like, I'm at the car wash, yeah, like that song playing for some reason. And because it was a song I loved when I was younger. And then I remember I was in Trader Joe's with one of my best friends, and I checked my chart, and this is like a really big milestone scan, and I see the scan, it was free, like no evidence of disease. And then there's just that song plays over the Trader Joe's speaker. I'm at the car wash, yeah, and I was just like, whoa, that's crazy. Like when I hear the good news, it went with the manifestation of sorts. Um, yeah, it was crazy. And I know we're out of
yeah, we
time.
are. Yeah, but it's okay. Wow. I wish we had more time because I have so many other things to say. But I guess to kind of end us off, is there any advice you'd give people who are in your situation? I mean, I have kind of a feeling I know what it is, but I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah, I'm as soon as someone hears the news, I would want them to know to just they have more time than they think, and to take that breath, take that beat to really decide how they want their healing to look. Even if that's just like choosing 3 words of like the energy they want to have other people handle them with, or like how they want their treatment to be guided, or really tune in and go inward and find the pathway for yourself, essentially.
Awesome. Great. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure that's gonna help a lot of people because I think people need to, hear this, especially since sarcoma is so rare. You don't get to hear a lot of advice. Well, you can read it, maybe on Reddit. I don't know, but it's nice to hear it from somebody who really went through it. So, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure, a lot of other people are gonna appreciate this now and in the future as well. So, thanks
Thank you
for
so much. And
speaking
I
with me.
am making like a little PDF book to distribute that has like all of my tangible things that I wish I had known from the beginning too. So once that's ready, I would love to share that and just like be the little guidebook that someone can insert their own things in there too.
Awesome. No, yeah, let me know because I'm so interested in looking at that. So,
Well,
all
thank you
right,
so much,
awesome.
Daphne. It's so fun to talk to you and to hear a little bit of your experience too. And thank you for doing what you're doing with Sark too.
Anytime, anytime. Thank you.